welcome to Sisters Speak Talk Show. I'm Hazel Cherry.
I'm Davia Janelle.
And I'm Angela Jones.
We welcome you to our show today. This is part 2 of mental health and wellness, and we're so excited to kick off wonderful topics about stigmas and denial and just overall getting our health and wellness on point where it should be. We're going to lead the conversation today talking about denial and just stigmas, how we can overcome those. Davia, lead us off in that part of the conversation.
So during our last discussion, Angela made a very big, poignant point about the fact that, oftentimes we as women of color are often in denial about some of the things that we may need to talk to or seek a professional out for, or even the fact that there are so many stigmas surrounding the conversations of mental health and Black women and mental health. And so we also kind of touched on the areas in which, we come to seek our support, whether it be through our families, other people in our communities, or through our church. But I really wanted to start looking at other avenues in which why it is maybe that women of color do not seek out professional help. So we wanted to start up the conversation in that vein.
Yeah, I think one good point is about access to healthcare. So that's a political issue, that's an everyday thing that we deal with. But since Obamacare came in, there's more healthcare for all of us, but there are still parameters around what kind of help you can get. So it could be 6 weeks of free session with your health care, but beyond that, what do you do? Or even the providers in some of those networks are not always up to par. I think you were talking earlier about an article that says the kind of health that these providers are giving are not always focused on people of color, and they don't always address really the issues and things that people of color are dealing with.
Absolutely.
Do you have some ideas?
Well, I was just going to add to what you were saying. Also, the professionals, because they're in high demand, they might not have many openings. So even if they're reachable, and I know in my personal experience, I've had to call several people just to get somebody on the phone, let alone be seen in person, because mental health needs are such an industry now that is in high demand that they're not often a lot of professionals giving help to new clients. So that's also an issue within the mental health industry, getting help. Even in seeking the help, when will you connect with the person? That's also something I've seen.
That's good. No, that's good. It also brings into the point of not just access and availability, but then there are other reasons, other factors impacting why it is so taboo for Black women, for people of color in general, to seek out professional help, because we also discussed before that there's so many misdiagnoses. So it's so easy to be just lumped in and categorized, oh, you're schizophrenic, oh, you're bipolar, and it's not to detract from people who seriously are schizophrenic and are bipolar and are seeking treatment for those things, but the fact that it can be so over-analyzed or so over-diagnosed that maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm really depressed, and this is an impact of my depression. This is a result of my depression. So being able to have the type of health care that actually speaks to your specific needs instead of just trying to be brushed off
And
to the side. Yeah, absolutely.
I think so. Another component we said we want to talk about is denial. So folks who may actually really need some help, and you can tell from some of the behaviors that they have or the way they interact with you that they really need to seek someone out. So how do you deal with persons, particularly our friends and family, those who are in close proximity to us, who you may discern is in denial? What are those steps that you could take to help them? Because I'm sure we all have somebody who we may want to recommend, and we're scared of the pushback that we may receive. So what do you guys think?
Well, for me, it's a very sensitive, subject socially, but when it comes to someone that is in your personal space on a regular basis, it becomes even more, difficult to bring up their needs, especially when you're dealing with your needs as too. So for me, all I can do is push a self-help book to some people, because, often times, especially when it comes to a lot of members in my family, we're heavily heavily associated with the Christian religion. So, that this could be another topic, but Christian counseling often is not enough.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
And I would say it is not enough based on just the biblical aspect of the Christian counseling when sometimes the deep-seated issues cannot be addressed within certain stories or the articulation and the interpretation of certain stories, because even though it's relates is not exactly what that person is going through, so they need some deeper clinical therapy that will really target those deep-seated issues. And so for me, I always find it to be a rough topic to discuss in those type of familial environments. So I don't know, I need help with my strategy.
No, that's good though. And you said something too that it just kind of like touched base when you said self-help, but it is exactly that, self-help. And it's not to say that you don't seek out counseling, but understand that everybody is in a place of trying to help themselves as they help somebody else, right? But it's encouraging somebody to actually do the work to seek out everything, every avenue that they could possibly get their hands on, healthily of course, to assist them in their process of helping themselves get to a better place and get to a healthy and whole place.
Sure. I found that sharing my personal experience about how therapy and counseling has really helped me is one way, because you can invite somebody to a community support group, with you to say like, hey, I'm going to this group and here's what I get out of it. Join me, So that's one way I think you can sort of easily bring a person into it, saying I'm walking through this with you, because sometimes it's a scary place to be in to get kind of help and counseling when especially when it's deep seated and you don't have the tools yourself to deal with it. You want to know that you have a partner in that process with you. So I think that's one big thing that I think can really help.
I would also add listening. I will also add the ministry of presence. Sometimes we don't have all the words to say. We don't have all the counsel to give, but sometimes if you're there just listening to their issues and they go through their little spouts of ups and downs, chemical imbalances, sometimes that helps. It might not be the totality of what they need to be secure and go to their growth and healing, but being a listening ear, I found, has been helpful in certain circumstances with friends and family, and the ministry of presence. When someone is having an anxiety attack or a breakdown, sometimes they just need somebody there with them, holding their hand, touch, being there beside them while they're going through the issue. So
I think that's a great point, and I think as the person is listening, so sometimes when you're close to a person and a person may be having like an episode or they get angry, sometimes it's easy to feel like, oh, this is towards me or about you. And one thing I have definitely learned in counseling is that you have to understand that while people are working through their stuff, like it really has nothing to do with you. So you can't like take that, you can't internalize that thing. So while you're listening, being mindful that like, this is really not about you. You know what I mean? Like we can very well be triggers or something for people, but beyond that, it's just like, this is their problem and you're being a presence there for them, but you don't necessarily have to take it on or internalize it, as you said.
So going back to self-care, what are some ways that we get to our happiness? What is happiness to us in our continual growth? Because even though we have found methods of self-care, we're still evolving. Problems will still arise. Circumstances will still come. Trouble is on its way. How do we combat those things and maintain our joy? We talked about that before we even got into our session. So
one thing for me, I know my personality, I operate with a servant's heart. But I understand too that everybody around me doesn't necessarily operate with a servant's heart. Some people are takers, and sometimes they're in a season of taking because they need to be replenished. But even in that facet, I still have to be very conscious of just how much I allow myself to serve in a particular area because it can deplete me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it can become unhealthy. So while, there is the ministry of presence and while there is the ministry of listening, sometimes for my own sake and my own sanity,
Sure.
I have to pull away.
Sure.
And then to debunk the myth of, if you're not always available for somebody else, then it's your fault or
Right.
something's wrong with you.
Sure.
That you're not
Sure.
showing up or
Sure.
you're out of tune. So I'm very conscious of those things.
Yeah, that's good. I think I'm just still learning and evolving to, like you said, to getting to that happy place. I've learned that since I've been like out of school and in the workforce, it really brings me joy to just come home and cook. Like as soon as I get home.
Thank you for telling me that.
As soon as I get home, like changing these clothes, get that bra off, get free, and then I'm in the kitchen and like, trying a new recipe. So it's like small things like that and just learning like, wow, this really brings me joy. It really relaxes me from a long days of work. And then I get to sit, whether alone or with my partner or whatever, and just enjoy what I've created and made too. Is something that I'm learning really makes me happy. It's a small thing and within my day that brings me happy.
I would add to one thing you said, the alone time. Because my days can be very busy. What makes me happy is to come to my home. It's a safe haven. We have to, create healtny spaces.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes the only healthy space we might have is our home. It might be our room. I don't know if some of us have war rooms. I don't know if we have prayer rooms. But we have to designate one room to make us happy. Even if it's just that, that picture on the wall that reminds us of a good place. I would add that with my sense of humor, that makes me happy to see other people laugh. We've talked about being introverted, but as a social introvert, when I can make someone else laugh, it makes me more engaged, more happy, more joyful, more resistant to things that will keep me bottled in. So those are a couple things.
That's good.
All right.
So one of the things we did touch upon was the fact that there's not so many avenues for accessibility for people of color, even though there are avenues now that with Obamacare, the mental health industry has now become more accessible to certain groups. However, it's not always supported to go and seek professional counseling or professional psychiatry. And people of color, especially women of color, are more attuned to looking towards within their communities or towards within their families or to their churches to find some type of solace through their illnesses.
Sure.
But then we also talked about the fact that even when professional means are sought out, there's also misdiagnoses, and then there's also the overdiagnoses in certain areas. So you have people who are constantly stigmatized as being bipolar or schizophrenic, and it's not to detract from those who are seriously going through those illnesses, but the fact that it's so common to be lumped in and have certain things like depression be ignored because it's not supported. What are some ways that we can kind of debunk the taboos that may cause people to deny the fact that they may be going through something in which they need to seek some type of counseling or some type of treatment towards?
I think one way to do that is to invite people out to maybe support groups or things that are happening in the community where they can see like, oh, counseling does work, or talking to folks does work, because sometimes it's about not being exposed to those kinds of mediums. Sometimes there are stigmas attached to it to where people are not familiar and it makes them resistant to it. But if you can go with a friend to a counseling group or a support group, or if somebody can give testimony about how counseling is really helping them, it may touch another person in another way to say, oh, wow, I'm dealing with that too. Like, and then even learn about the accessibility, as you talked about earlier, that's out there, like learning how to go online and go to, look up for a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist. Sometimes it's about that as a barrier, like not even knowing where to look or where to search. So just making sure that the people who are in your network know where to go, but also showing them by leading them to some of the places and spaces they can go to get that help.
That's really good. What are ways in which you may be able to assist people, or how have you helped your friends or family members when they're facing a crisis of some sort and they really should seek out some type of treatment?
So for me, it's often difficult because in my familial environment, a lot of times people tend to go to Christian counseling, and oftentimes when we go to Christian counseling, the biblical aspects of mental health are addressed, but there needs to be more clinical, therapy in those sessions. So for me, sometimes it's sliding a self-help book to a family member, or recommending a person, a YouTube clip, a sound bite, an Instagram picture I saw to encourage someone. If I'm there with them physically, I might, just ask them to express themselves so I can listen and be an active listener, so I can respond in an effective way that will show empathy. Oftentimes there might be a situation where I encounter someone who is having a breakdown or a panic attack or something, similar to that. So sometimes ministry of presence is all you can do. If there's somebody who's been hospitalized due to their mental needs, sometimes the ministry of presence is all you have. And the ministry of presence means that you're there and your spirit arises to the situation, that your spirit, shows a source of love. So sometimes that's all I have.
And I think that's good, and it's very, very valid. And I would add to that is that when we encounter people who are dealing with things that get them off balance, whether that's a panic attack, depression, sometimes we can feel, because we're close to them, like it might be something we've done, or might be something we've said, or it's a result of an encounter or an experience. So even while we're listening and trying to be a ministry of presence, to always know that this is something that person is dealing with, and as a friend and as a loved one, I want to be present for them with this, but I don't have to internalize it as something that is a direct effect upon me or my behaviors. And on the flip side of that, to also know that for ourselves, people who are triggers for us, or cause triggers for our own health and wellness, and to create boundaries and parameters. So it's just two sides to that. I think that wherever you may fall on the plane, to be mindful of both of those.
So what are some ways in which you both have learned to cultivate your happy and to live in and create your happy? What do you do?
For me, I'm still learning and evolving in those practices. But I do know that as now that I'm a working professional and out of school, when I come home, I just really want to cook. That really helps me to calm down from a stressful day at work. Like, I get my clothes off, get the bra off, and then I'm in the kitchen trying a new recipe, trying something different. And that really just like lifts my spirits. And to be able to sit and just enjoy the meal that I've made, whether it's by myself or with a loved one, but just to really create and then enjoy. That is something that makes me happy.
I would say alone time. Similarly to both of you, we have busy schedules. We're working on a lot of things. We're goal oriented, so we're always looking for the next best thing to do for ourselves and our purpose. So sometimes the only space I have to get my happy is at home. So that is my safe haven, whether it's that closet, that war room, my bedroom, the living room, the couch that I love. There is that alone time that makes me happy, and also because I love to see others laugh. My sense of humor is where I find happiness. Engaging with people, being approachable, being loving in a fun way also brings me happiness. Seeing the smiles on my friends, seeing the smiles and laughter, enjoying people's spaces. And actually, to add to that, I would say people watching makes me happy. Yes. It's fun. It can be a lot of fun.
It really can be.
It can be. Just going out, after having lunch with your friends, just sitting on a bench, go downtown, Silver Spring or whatever, just sitting there and watching people. It can be hilarious.
I make up stories all the time when people are doing.
What about you, Davi?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. There's so many, but I think reconnecting. Yes, I feel like I pour so much. I'm a natural server. I pour so much, and I have to be cautious about spaces in which I'm pouring into, because everybody doesn't necessarily pour. A lot of people are comfortable just with taking, and they're fine with just taking. So I have to be very very careful about where I'm pouring and how much of myself I'm pouring out. But then even when I'm cultivating that, you know, protective space and this protective layer, there are people who love to pour too. And so I love to be around, especially sister friends who I can get with and who just constantly just reciprocate that love. I'm big on reciprocity. So it still allows for me to pour and get my energy from pouring and not be depleted at the same time.
So if you all could uplift one nugget that you would admonish our viewers out there to take with them, whether it be a practice or a thought process, just anything that we can leave with our viewers to maybe give them something to ponder and think on for their mental health. I'll go first since I asked. But one thing that has been helpful for me on my journey of just mental health and wellness and even self-acceptance is to change the language around body image and just how I treat myself overall. So sometimes we can get angry or overly emotional and we're like, why am I angry with myself? Why am I crying about this? Or, you know, sort of beat yourself up about it. But I think in those moments, just changing the language to say, okay, I'm really being judgmental, you know, you being judgmental about it. Honor that space as sacred too, and then just move on. I think that's one thing that we can just learn how to speak to ourselves and affirm ourselves in the moment when we're feeling sort of discomfort or anxious, to just say, well, yeah, this is how I'm feeling. And just as joy or happiness is a sacred thing and a part of ourselves, that those moments of anger and angst are as well too, and honor those moments.
I would say shut out the noise. Oftentimes we are overwhelmed with others' expectations, you know, whether it is from our loved ones, from our colleagues, professionally, you know, vocationally. Sometimes we have to shut out the noise. We have to deal with ourselves, be by ourselves, know ourselves, so we can get to an authentic place. So even if we do see that there's issues arising within ourselves, that we can address them in a holistic way, in a healthy way, because we are assured of who we are.
That's really good. That's good. Mine would be take control. You are the God reflection of you. There is no other person on this planet that is like you. You are valuable. You are important. The way you feel, who you are, is all of value. And in doing so, if you need something, just ask for it. Seek it out. You know, get yourself in a healthy, productive place to where you can be whole at all times.
Amen. Thank you all. Thank you, ladies, for your input today. And we really appreciate you all tuning in. There's a scripture in 1 John that says, "Beloved, I pray in all things that you would prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers." So as you're prospering in your spiritual life, we want you to be whole and well in all aspects. That is what God desires for you. So we just pray for you today that you will be whole and well and seek out those avenues to be a healthy and whole human being. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in today.
Bye.